HR departments are responsible for overseeing the recruiting, interviewing, and hiring of employees. They're also meant to be a link between those workers and management. But two surveys conducted last year revealed that link to be nothing more than a pipe dream, with 35% of workers admitting they don't trust HR and almost 38% saying they would be more confident in HR if the department were more transparent. HR's lack of transparency, some would even say lack of honesty, is a problem that's especially obvious when it comes to the poor excuses these folks give older workers when they fire them or when they create situations that force older workers to quit their job. In this episode of Over 50 TV, we rank the top 5 excuses HR gives for firing workers over 50. Welcome back to Over 50 TV, where we provide essential work and money tips for people over 50. My name is Lou Reyes. Before the break, I told you that in this episode, we're going to rank the top 5 excuses HR gives for firing workers over 50. But before I reveal that list, I'm going to ask you to subscribe to our channel. All you've got to do is hit that little red button. It's underneath your screen. Now, there's also a little bell. If you smash that little bell every single time we upload a new video, you'll be notified in your inbox. So let's get down to business. I'd say over the past 2 years, maybe a little bit longer, viewers have used our viewer comment section to share the excuses that HR has used for firing them, their family members, or maybe even their friends. And what became clear after sifting through hundreds of these messages is that there are about 5 of the most often used excuses that HR will use when they're about to fire somebody over 50. And we're going to share those excuses with you now. I'm also going to share some of the research that we did. And I'll start with excuse number 5. I'm going to work backwards to the number one reason HR gives for firing older workers. Excuse number 5, tardy too many times. Now, this HR excuse does also include leaving work early, taking too much time off, and missing work or missing a day entirely. I do want to be clear, though. I do believe HR is justified in firing a worker for abusing or ignoring workplace rules. The problem is when enforcement or punishment for breaking the rules is meted out unequally. And according to many reader comments, unequal enforcement, it happens more frequently to workers over 50. One of our viewers who goes by the handle MJC427, she had this to say. She says, and I'll read it to you. She says, I worked for a business a number of years. Then they made a never late policy. After 3 times, you'd be fired. So my manager calls me into her office and says she has no problem with my work, but I had been late twice in a month. I was 20 seconds late on one day and almost a minute on another day. That she was putting me on probation for this, I knew at that moment it was not if I would be fired, but when. Well, unfortunately for MJC 427, she read the situation correctly. She says, my manager and the HR lady came to my desk on a Friday and called me into the conference room. She told me there were exactly 3 days I was late. Each one was for seconds, 23, 31, and 26 seconds. It wasn't until my mid-50s, she says, that I ran into this. Well, unfortunately, she was fired. Now, MJC 427 doesn't mention if other workers who came in seconds late were fired, but I sort of doubt that they were fired for being seconds late. Excuse number 4, refuse early retirement. Well, in 2020, many U.S. companies who were looking for ways to reduce costs during the pandemic offered older employees early retirement packages. Now, this offer, it forced a tough decision on many boomers who up until then had no plans to retire. Now, we do know that under the Age Discrimination Employment Act, employers are not permitted to require employees to retire unless their offer meets one of the limited exceptions to the rule, which the rules are really too long for me to go into here. But I will say this, when an employee is suddenly offered an early retirement package, it's only natural, especially if it's an older worker, to wonder if the company's voluntary retirement offer is really just a shrewd disguise to force them out. Well, certainly some feared that possibility. They feared being fired from their job if they refuse. And since those early days of the pandemic, nearly 2 million older workers have left the labor force for good. And this is according to the Schwartz Center for Economic Policy Analysis. Now, whether those workers accepted a retirement package because they felt it was a good time to leave or they feared they'd be fired, the fact is many older workers were not. They were just not financially prepared to retire. HR excuse number 3, the layoff and cutting hours. Companies sometimes take the necessary step of laying off workers to cut costs so they can stay in business or remain competitive. And this, to me, is understandable. What's not understandable is when the layoffs are based on a worker's age. What's also not understandable is when you cut an older worker's hours based on their age. What makes this HR move worse, at least to me, is when the employee's hours are gradually or steadily reduced over time. This is a weak and selfish HR move, and it's really a slow form of torture that is psychologically draining for the employee and his family. Dozens of over 50 TV viewers said they were given these 2 excuses before they were either fired or forced to quit a job. One of our viewers, Joe Jordan, had this to say about this HR practice. He says they generally force you to quit by cutting your hours and your schedule and doing a lot of different things to you to make your job impossible. HR excuse number 2, your position is being eliminated. How many of you out there have heard that? It's certainly one of the popular excuses or most popular excuses used by HR folks. It's also one of the safest excuses that HR can use because it mutes charges of age discrimination, while simultaneously what it does is it reduces the employee's legal options. But the fired worker could have the last laugh if afterwards they discover another employee was given the same responsibilities with the same or more income, but with a different job title. That discovery, it could open the company up to charges of age discrimination. One of our viewers who goes by the handle Bam Bam, he had this to say about this HR excuse. He says, I just went through this, all this age discrimination, training BS, and in the end, no one cares. Bye-bye, old fella. Your position is being eliminated. Textbook discrimination without any repercussion. And sadly, I think Bam Bam is right. Let's give you reason number 1. Poor performance. Now, poor performance is hands down one of the most frequently cited excuses HR uses to fire older workers. And this is according to our viewers. Lots of excuses, though, they do fall, or I should say are dumped into this single category. And that includes worker moves too slow, doesn't meet requirements or standards, has no sense of urgency, or has poor work habits. And there are certainly many other excuses that fall into this catch-all, but I think you get the point. But I should mention that the poor performance excuse, the excuse for firing workers, it's often preceded by multiple write-ups for minor or frivolous infractions, and sometimes it's even preceded by probation. One of our viewers, ADC Phenomena, she goes by that handle, I think she summed it up best. She said this. She said, got me at 56. After 10 years with the same company, flawless record, I was out on FMLA taking care of my elderly mother after the death of my father. She said, when I returned, I received a write-up for failing a safety audit during my absence. She said that was done 33 days to the date of my return. She says, they hired 2 people to do my job. Fortunately, I had prepared carefully, so I just retired and made money having fun. Well, thank God it worked out for ADC Phenomena, but sadly, it doesn't always work out for everyone over 50. Well, there you have it. We just ranked the top 5 excuses HR gives for firing workers over 50. And this list, as I mentioned previously or earlier, it was comprised from comments that we received from hundreds of viewers of our videos here on Over 50 TV. Now, there are two ways that I know of for older workers to overcome poor treatment like this, like we described here in this list. Either you learn a new high-income skill or you start a side hustle. Now, I can't help much with learning a new high-income skill, but I can suggest that you follow us on our new Patreon page. It's called Side Hustle Theater. On this page, we create programming to help you, to show you how to build a profitable side hustle. Now, if you have any comments, any questions, please feel free to put them in the comment box below the video. I definitely look forward to reading them. I also want to ask you one more time to subscribe to Over 50 TV. You can do that. You can do it easily by just clicking on that little red button underneath your screen. Now, there's also a little bell. If you smash that little bell every single time we upload a new video, you'll be notified in your inbox. Well, as I always say, have a great day, everybody.